I don't know what we're gonna do with these bulls. So it's kind of like we've never dealt with them before. So it was a little bit intimidating. That one seems a little low, actually. Hey, good morning. Welcome back to Ohrmundt Simmentals. This is Chris. So, Saturday morning, a little bit later start. Really rainy, gloomy morning. All right, so we kicked Whitey Gergs and her calf out, and those two heifers, those smaller ones, the State of War and Lily, that Helg's Bruno daughter. Right now, we're going to take our broadcast spreader down to the shop and try and pull this guy apart, because he has not worked real well for the last couple of years. See if there's something that we can do to it to make it work better. Everything's there, just make it work better. Alright, so Dad's going to take that down to the shop. So what I was talking about was, okay, here's the gearbox. So this guy's upside down, and it does show its age. It spread some fertilizer in its day. So this is the platform, and this are the whirlies that kick the seat out. This is the plate that has the seed rate in it, and then this is that spring that I was talking about. But what we need to do is, I think we need to take this whole framework off to be able to pull this apart. And she's a little rusty. Morning! Alright, Sunday morning. We are rolling. It's kind of nice out, but it's breezy. That one last heifer that we left in the yard is in heat this morning. So, of course, the last one of the year has to come in heat on a Sunday. I don't know what we're going to do with these bulls, because this black State of War is like solid mud on his face. He's been rubbing his face in dirt all night long. I don't know what to tell you. If it wouldn't rain every freaking day, it wouldn't be such a big deal. All right, so on the list for today, we do need to break out the Discbine and get the New Holland 1411, start going through it, checking oil levels, getting all greased up, make sure all the pods are timed up, which honestly they are. They really don't come out of timing, and I can show you that later. We had to time them up pretty good when we first got it. Okay, so this is our New Holland 1411. So we've had this for, so it's going to be year 5, I think. We went from a New Holland 499. It got to the point where it didn't matter how we adjusted it. New knives, new bar, all that stuff. That thing just would not cut decent. We think the actual, like the frame where the bar rides against was just so wore out and rippled. It would have taken us hours to get it set right. So we were like, okay, let's upgrade to this guy. We had a 488 for years, like everybody else, and that thing cut nice. Even towards the end, it was so wore out, but yet it cut nice. Then we got a 495 that you could actually set up and pull from the end. That was a tank. That was a beast. But the width was nice, having that cutting width. Then we got to a 499, and that thing was good for about 4 or 5 years. But then that cutter bar for a couple years, just, it didn't matter how slow you went, it could not cut worth a damn. There are pluses and minuses to this guy. It does not have the shock hubs on it. We did not go and do that upgrade yet. We have fairly decent ground without a whole lot of rock, so we don't have too much of an issue with that. Okay, so these are the cutting pods, or as some will say, these are the turtles. So what you like to see is, as much as possible, when that's pointing forward, this is horizontal, straight ahead, horizontal, straight ahead. And now it's a little bit, I mean, this thing does need to kind of break its spring rust loose, but what we'll do is we'll start on the other end and we'll take this off, and we'll actually take the pod off, kind of look underneath, make sure, because sometimes nylon twine will get wrapped around in here. You want to clean all that out. But then it makes getting to checking the oil back here for the gearbox a lot easier, because from basically here to here, this under here is a gearbox, and then this section in here is actually a spacer. So then they are all timed, and they're individual, so they will connect with a they'll connect with a shaft that sticks out in one, or they'll have a shaft, I think there's a shaft in here that connects to this one and then this one, so they're individually sealed. So we'll start pulling them apart and checking oils, cleaning debris, and putting them back on. It usually takes a little while, and we did get a hold of our tech, and he's going to be here in about an hour and get that heifer bred, and then in a couple days she can go out on pasture. All right, we take that guy off. Don't lose those, and get ourselves back into time here. So this is the hub that the turtle gets bolted into. Now there's little splines underneath this big washer that hook into a spline shaft down here in the gearbox. Now doesn't look like we need to take anything off here, just blow everything out. So that guy can stay there, and we'll work on the next one. So what you will kind of notice is, and this is from where either in the gearbox or the shaft connecting the two gearboxes, when you time them up, there's enough slop. You can see if that one's horizontal, vertical, horizontal, vertical. Once you get down to here, you start getting a little bit more, you know, I'm turning this, but like the one next to it, that one are all turning, but then that fourth one is not turning until now, and then that one turns. So there's a little bit of slop, and that's from a little bit of wear in the gearbox, and especially in the shafts themselves. What Dad's doing is he's looking at the knives, whether or not we're going to sharpen them or replace them. They usually can take at least a couple of sharpenings before we just replace them. All right, let's take the next one off. Alright, so then this is just that cap cover. Throw your bolts in there. And then pod comes off just like the last one. And then kind of the same thing. Got a little bit of buildup right here on the edge. Here's some of that twine and other stuff. So you just got to make sure. Yeah, and this is where now I want to take this one off. And so the other thing that I'll make sure when I'm looking at this, so here are your splines. This is hub, and what you screw into is that shaft, so you can see the splines there. So now I'm going to pull that guy off. And when I do that, I make I'm always having this hole vertical, this hole horizontal, so that when I put it back on, it's going to match that, which isn't, as long as those are vertical and horizontal, then you can time these pods back up. Kind of clean this up. It's just easier to get at this. When that is out. And then what I'll do, there is a seal in there, but I don't want to let a lot of stuff get in there. You can tell this one's actually newer because it actually has a breather valve. Okay, now I can put this guy back on. Hole as vertical as possible. Alright, let me chatter that tight. Okay, so on this last one, we have the same type of cage we had on the first one, but then you have this U-joint assembly that goes from this spline shaft down and connects to this pod. What happens though, and there's a little cup right here that is supposed to, because there's a seal under there for the gearbox that this guy comes out of. And you always have to make sure that this thing is clean. And we clean this out like 2-3 times a year because this will get full of junk. Bad part is you can't necessarily take these bolts out and pull this cap down because every time I do that, oil runs out. All right, so we're back down in the shop. Took a little bit of a lunch, but right before that, we had to get that heifer sorted out and get her bred. Got a hold of Scott. Scott came and he had a couple things going on today, but he fit us in, which was great. That is the last AI of the year. Everything is off. All the turtles are off. So these guys are ones that we've already gone through. I think these have the knives that can get flipped. And I think Dad either flipped them or if they were in good shape, he sharpened them. So now what I got to do, I got the right socket right before we left. We got to go and check the oil in the gearboxes. I do know when we first got this, we started looking at Discbines, and we kind of knew that, like, oh, the gearboxes can kind of be a little bit of a pain. You got to make sure the pods are timed and all of that stuff. So it's kind of like we've never dealt with them before. So it was a little bit intimidating. But actually, I follow and still watch One Lonely Farmer, Wes. And years and years ago, he actually tore apart a 1411 and kind of went through the whole thing and was just kind of showing like how you did stuff. And I found that, and I think he did that like a year or two before we got ours. And I found that, sent it to Dad, and he was like, oh, that's really not that bad. So honestly, thanks to Wes for showing us actually how fairly easy it is. It is a pain in the ass to take those gearboxes apart because you kind of got to drop the whole cutter bar, but we've done that too. But like regular maintenance, this thing ain't that bad. And having that video to kind of show how to do it really helped out. So yeah, it's really not bad. And then these have a little dipstick on them. And then you just have to be on this little patterned part. So that looks good, actually. That one seems a little low, actually. And we'll go get some more gear lube. It's a little better. It's so hard to tell on those dipsticks. All right, so we've got all the turtles back on. I actually made a slight foobar. So when you look at this, these two, this one cuts this way, this one cuts that way. Then these two cut together this way, this way. Then these two this way and this way. And then these two this way and this way. Well, I had this one cutting this way, and then I had this way and this way. So we swapped that one out to go over there. So that's probably the one that I miss the most. So we found out that one of the 4 of the more important ones to grease are actually these two guys. So these are for your cutter bar, and I think what they allow it to do is to flex just a little bit, but if you let it wear out, then it gets really floppy, and you have issues, because we had issues. Because when the pins wear out, doesn't that put more stress on the cutter bar?
I think so.
So I actually just remembered one thing. When part of the reason we went and changed these and actually got ones that are greasable, they were greasable, they just weren't taking grease, and we didn't realize that we were supposed to grease them. I think part of the reason, some of these didn't even have the Zerk in them, but as this droops down, it actually puts more pressure on the gearbox, and I think we read about that when our gearbox went out, because it did. That was a little expensive, but there's a lot of routine maintenance that prevents all that stuff. So we've got the Discbine pretty much ready to go. If we wanted to, we could go cut right now, but what we do need to do, well, one, it's feeding time. Not that there's a whole lot to feed, but we got a lot of bedding to do, and we got to rearrange animals. All right, so we have everybody sorted out, actually the way we want to, and it turned out better than we thought. So, State of War, Black Bull, still where he was before. Except now he's got a bunch of fresh bedding and all that, and we got a bunch of fresh bedding in here throughout the whole barn. He already so graciously cleaned his face off already. And then Bravo is right here, basically where Whitey Gergs was the other day. And it was honestly like almost the quietest they've been in the last hour. And then Bankrolls right here. I don't want to fire him up too much or get him too excited, because honestly we are dealing with wooden gates. Yesterday was kind of, even me and Dad both said yesterday was kind of a waste. We got a lot more done today. Probably shouldn't have torn apart that broadcast spreader, but honestly, if you're not going to know what's wrong with it until you pull it apart. Today was pretty darn nice. Finding out that the 44 was a little more thirsty than we thought it was. And then getting the Discbine basically ready to rock. And it's supposed to rain on Tuesday, but we're going to kind of see what the weather looks like. We got sale day on Tuesday, but if it looks decent, we might do our first cutting, which is the field always right next to Mom and Dad's. It's close. It's just like 3 acres, 3.5 acres. And then that turns into pasture in about a month. So, yeah. So we got some decent stuff done. Getting that Discbine ready to go is always a good thing. And we got to get haying going pretty darn quick. So this is the end of the weekend, end of the day, end of the video. If you guys got any questions, please leave them in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, support the channel, and hit that like button. And thanks for coming along.